All right, welcome guys to our second unit, which is Chapter 12, the Intellectual Development of Toddlers. The essential question of this unit is how do toddlers make a transition to learning through mental rather than physical actions, and how can parents and other caregivers encourage toddlers' curiosity and their active exploration? So our first section is how toddlers learn. After studying this lesson, you should be able to summarize brain development during the toddler years, describe 3 characteristics of the toddler's learning in substage 5 of the sensory motor stage, summarize 3 characteristics of the toddler's learning in substage 6, explain how culture is involved in scaffolding for toddlers, and that's it. As you know from toddlers' physical development, the brain undergoes a growth spurt during toddlerhood. The toddler's brain becomes super dense in synapses and has a high concentration of neurotransmitters. The glial cells responsible for myelination are also very active. All of these happenings are genetically pre-programmed and should occur except in cases of brain abnormalities or trauma. The dense wiring allows for new learning, and myelination increases the speed of connections. A competition among these wirings will occur, however. Used wirings remain and become stronger, but unused wirings will be pruned soon after toddlerhood. This competition among the wirings is experience dependent. So, experiences dictate which brain connections are strengthened, and lack of certain experiences determine which are pruned. These experiences are vital to learning within windows of opportunity. For example, picking out clothes is giving the toddler experience in independence, a skill for which the window of opportunity ends in the toddler years. The toddler's brain continues to develop in the sensory and motor areas. Toddlers can make fine sensory discriminations, such as seeing various shades of a given color or hearing small differences in sounds. These sensory discriminations lead to rather accurate perceptual concepts, but not to logical understandings. Furthermore, gross and fine motor skills are becoming very coordinated, and motor activities such as assembling take-apart objects will enhance their learning. Brain development in toddlerhood allows for the great intellectual advance we call mental imagery, which is seeing in the mind's eye or hearing in the mind's ear in the absence of a stimulus. Mental imagery will eventually lead to abstract thinking and creativity. Unlike infants who simply adjust their actions to the properties of objects, moving after they see a ball rolling away from them, or hitting metal objects to make loud sounds, toddlers begin to impose their mental ideas on objects as seen in when they begin pretend playing. Soon a block is not just for stacking, but it could be a chair or a shaker for a spice. Development in the language and memory areas of the brain aids toddlers' thinking. The language of their world aids toddlers in the following way: refining and extending their current knowledge. Verbalization of adults helps toddlers see important criteria in their problem-solving activities. For example, a parent might say, because you kept your blocks straight, your tower will not fall so easily. Now the toddler sees one important criterion, alignment, for physical stability in block building. Simplifying the learning of difficult new concepts. Language clues help people think by focusing their attention on specific things. For example, in an experiment, toddlers were asked to match pattern blocks. Toddlers simply told to match the blocks had a more difficult time with the task than toddlers who were given some verbal cues about different patterns, like those with stripes and those with dots. Even mature listeners and readers get constant clues from language through words, such as similar to, for example, in contrast, on the other hand, essential question, in 3 ways, and to summarize. Storing in memory what has been learned. Verbalization greatly aids in remembering. For example, toddlers who tell about their trip to the zoo or retell a story about the zoo by looking at the pictures in the book will retain more information than toddlers who do not verbalize their experiences. Frequently telling makes the memory even stronger. Brain development leads to many windows of opportunity for toddlers. On the other hand, toddlerhood is a period of vulnerability if environmental conditions are not good. Optimal conditions include nutrition adequate to support their fast-growing brain, general physical health, a very rich play environment surrounded by quality language exposure, and an emotionally supportive, stress-free world. So as we just discussed, language helps aid toddlers' thinking by refining and extending their current knowledge, simplifying difficult new concepts, and storing in their memory what has been learned. Hopefully you guys remember who Piaget was and his cognitive development theory because it's important. He uses stages to describe their cognitive development. In the first stage is what we call the sensory motor stage. Children from birth to 2 years of age learn through their senses and their motor actions. The sensory motor stage includes 6 substages. During infancy, babies work through the first 4 substages. During the toddler years, he believed that they completed the last 2 substages. In substage 5, which is called Tertiary circular reactions, younger toddlers, about 12 to 18 months of age, learn by discovering new ways to solve problems through physical trial and error. In substage 6, which is called mental imagery or representation, older toddlers, around 18 to 24 months of age, begin to think about how to solve a problem without using their physical actions. By the end of the toddler years, a few children may enter the second stage of cognitive development called the pre-operational stage, which we will learn about later. So in substage 5, Piaget called children little scientists because they are so busy exploring and discovering the possibilities in their world. In the previous substage, infants practice the same actions of exploring and experimenting. However, in substage 5, toddlers take another intellectual step as they further their curiosity and show lots of interest in new actions. After discovering one way to use an object, toddlers are interested in discovering what else they can do with the same object. Children in this substage vary their actions to see why different actions get different results. As you know, Piaget called substage 5 tertiary circular reactions. He used the term tertiary, which means third in the sequence, because it's the third major change in intellectual development. The first 2 changes happen during infancy. He used the term circular because toddlers enjoy repeating their actions. Repeating actions helps them verify their observations, which is similar to how scientific findings are verified through additional research and experiments. In substage 5, children's learning is characterized by working toward a goal, using imitation and pretense, and having a greater understanding of object permanence. So working towards a goal, in this substage, toddlers' actions involve reaching a goal. Toddlers experiment by using physical trial and error methods to solve their problems. They try first what worked in the past. If this is not successful, they change their behavior. As they are exploring, experimenting, and discovering ways to reach their goals, they get into everything and they can cause chaos in their environment. To an adult, the toddler's goal may be obvious. For example, a toddler might try to take a lid off a container to see what's inside of it. Sometimes the toddler's goal may not be so obvious. The child may seem to only be playing with or throwing objects, but in reality, the child is trying to figure out how these objects work. Young toddlers want to know what happens to objects when they roll, shake, throw, or move them in other ways. Repeating actions with minor changes helps toddlers learn the best way to reach their goals. These experiments are the signs of developing intellectual skills with your toddler. The second part is using imitation and pretense. A toddler's imitation with the model present is quick and accurate. For example, toddlers can watch others make facial expressions and gestures like nodding or waving, and listen to others' sounds and words and quickly imitate these. Imitation is a major way of learning. Pretense, which is symbolic actions seen in play that mimic real situations, also starts. There are different levels of pretense. Piaget referred to the first level of pretense as solitary symbolic play. Young toddlers pretend using either real objects or realistic toys. They cannot use objects to represent something entirely different. At this level, the toddler pretends to do something that has to do with him or herself. For example, a toddler might pretend to eat. The pretense does not involve dolls, stuffed animals, or other people, although the young toddler might try to get others to watch them play. The second level of pretense, called collective symbolism, will occur in substage 6. Having greater understanding of object permanence is the last one. Toddlers develop a greater understanding of object permanence in this stage. Before this stage, they would look for a missing object where they first saw or found it. Infants cannot conceive that an object might be where they last saw it. Unlike infants, young toddlers will look for a completely hidden object where it was last seen or found. They cannot, however, imagine the object might be hidden in some other place. Therefore, understanding of object permanence is almost complete in this substage. With substage 6, young toddlers do not have very developed thought processes. They learn through trial and error methods. Around 18 to 24 months, their intellectual abilities change again as they enter substage 6. Older toddlers, which are 18 to 36 months, now think about what they do before they do it. The 3 main characteristics that describe this are identified by thinking. Toddlers think to achieve goals, they imitate and engage in pretense, and they locate hidden objects. When you see toddlers pause mid-action, they are probably thinking. They will figure things out intellectually instead of testing them physically. For example, the 2-year-old realizes a large object will not fit through a small opening in a container. They mentally visualize trying to put the object through the opening before concluding that it is too big to fit. A 1-year-old, however, would try to push a large object through the small opening and then realize that the object does not fit. Older toddlers will mainly think in terms of actions. They even identify objects in terms of actions. For an example, a 30-month-old toddler might answer the question, "What is a ball?" with the reply, "to play with" or "to roll." So first of all, thinking to achieve goals. Thinking shows in the toddler's way of how they reach their goals in substage 6. For example, the toddler's goal may be to reach a toy on a high playroom shelf. The toddler thinks about the step stool he or she uses in the bathroom to reach the sink. The toddler then gets the stool to reach the object on the playroom shelf. If they cannot bring the stool into the playroom, they may use another object as a stool to reach the toy on the shelf. The toddler has thought through how to reach their goal. Second part is thinking is involved in imitation and pretense. Young toddlers can only imitate a person's actions when the model is present. Older toddlers, however, can imitate person's actions without the model present. This ability to recall and later imitate someone's behavior is called deferred imitation. Deferred means delayed or postponed. Children use deferred imitation in both pretend play and in language. Symbolic play moves to another level too. The older toddler extends pretend play beyond himself or herself in two different ways. First, pretend play now includes other people. Second, the toddler begins to use actions that are not part of his or her own personal skill set. For example, a toddler might use deferred imitation of his father shaving and pretend to shave. Older toddlers also enter Piaget's second level of pretense called collective symbolism. By 2 years of age, toddlers can use one set of objects to represent another set of objects. For example, blocks can be cars and trucks, or leaves can be dishes. Pretense now extends beyond the toddler's him or herself and involves other people like parents and other objects like stuffed animals as part of the play. At this age, a few toddlers can also combine actions like feeding a doll, reading the doll a story, and putting the doll to bed, but most toddlers will just do one action at a time. Lastly, thinking is involved in locating hidden objects. During substage 6, children's understanding of object permanence is complete. Older toddlers may demonstrate this understanding by searching for hidden objects. For an example, an adult might pretend to hide a toy in one place but really hides it in another. The toddler knows the toy still exists, which is object permanence, and thinks about where the toy might be hidden. To find a hidden object, the toddler must be able to think in terms of spatial concepts. For example, the toddler considers which objects would be large enough to conceal the hidden toy. So now that you understand Piaget's cognitive development theory, what type of behaviors would you expect to see from toddlers, specifically toddlers in substage 5 and toddlers in substage 6? Alright, so to talk about Vygotsky's social-cultural theory, he felt teaching children is a basic socio-cultural activity. He believed that teachers, which is anyone guiding a child in a learning process, should scaffold, or help the child learn, within their zone of proximal development. In most cultures, scaffolding begins during the toddler years. In a group-oriented culture, scaffolding is often done by parents, extended family members, and siblings. In an individual-oriented culture, parents are the primary teachers. Scaffolding strategies used in teaching children are also affected by the culture and social environment in which a child is reared. Some families prefer to use direct methods of instruction to support children's learning. For example, some families direct the child's attention, model and instruct, help the child perform, and provide feedback. Others prefer less hands-on methods. These families might model but do not directly engage the child by getting his or her attention first and explaining exactly how to do a task. What is taught to children involves cultural values of families too. For example, some cultures like to show affection more than others. In teaching pretend play, families in group-oriented cultures will show more affection, like hugs and kisses, to dolls than families that are in individual-oriented cultures. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. That's the end of this section.